Okay, why don't we start with you introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Farah Dasani. I'm the Chief Chai Officer and CEO of One Stripe Chai. We're a South Asian beverage brand that's focused on bringing the rich tradition of chai to your homes and your favorite coffee shops.
Farah, where are you from?
I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia.
Why did you start One Stripe Chai?
So that's an interesting story. I didn't really intend to start One Stripe Chai. I had this feeling where I was like, if I'm going to be really, really, really stressed out, I'm happy to be really stressed out if it's something that I really care about. And the other thing I was really interested in was this idea of like specialty coffee. So like, I remember one time I was getting like a almond milk mocha and it was like $8 or $9. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, what justifies this cost? Because at the end of the day, a coffee bean is a commodity product, right? It's like a bean is a bean is a bean. And so how can Folgers be so cheap? Why, like, you're charging me for craft, but like, what is the craft?
Yeah.
And so I was getting really interested in like the supply chain and also brewing my own coffee. I told my sister that, and I didn't really think anything of it because I think a lot of us we say that all the time. We're like, oh, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do that. And it's really the follow through, because when you work a corporate job, you're always waiting for like the next bonus or the next paycheck. And it's really hard to just kind of like cut ties. But I remember telling my parents at dinner,
There was just a mini earthquake.
Oh my God.
what just happened?
That was an
There's just a
earthquake.
mini
I thought that was a
earthquake.
bird.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I remember telling my parents, like, we went to dinner and I was with my sister and I was like, oh, by the way, like, I kind of want to quit my job and like at that time I was like, I want to open up a coffee shop either in New York or in Atlanta.
Okay, wait, because I was gonna ask you like what was your family reaction, but then I almost stopped myself because I was like, oh, like would you ask that if you were interviewing a man? But like then I was like, okay, I'm more asking you that question because you're a minority.
Yeah.
Less so because you're a woman.
I think in a lot of like minority families, there's this like daughters are like dolls and you don't let them do anything and like the sons can go do risky things. And my dad was always the opposite, where he was like, we were in high school, we were expected to have jobs. He was like, you want to go out with your friends? You want to do this or that? Like, you need to understand the value of money. And like, sure, like, yes, your education is important, but like, I don't care if you work at the mall. I like worked at Limited Too for,
Oh my God.
for senior year. So it's like, he really wanted us to like be self-sufficient, because his whole thing was like, if we're gone one day, like way earlier than you expect us to be, like, I don't want you all to be like, what do we do? And like not understand how to like take care of yourself.
On that point, I feel like I have this like nascent theory about something where like minority families that have only daughters versus ones that have like a son and a daughter. I feel like to generalize, like the women who grow up, the type of women they grow up into are very different.
Yeah.
Because like when there are no sons in the minority family, then the like expectations
Are
of
different,
the boys are put onto the women. But it's positive.
It's positive, yeah.
It's actually positive.
Yeah. And usually like the eldest child in like the two or three or four daughter, is like is very different. Like the expectation is different. And I think you have a little bit more of a responsibility to like set a good example. And I think that's important, because I think like, like a lot of immigrant parents came here to give their kids a better life. And so like, I think his reason for saying that was like, you have some privilege here. And so like, don't just like take it for granted and be like, I'm just going to go, open up a restaurant, but I've never waited tables and I don't understand what goes into it. And so he was like, I want you to like go like be a barista, do something like that, and like really understand, how a coffee shop works. And if you still feel like you want to do this, then like we'll always support you. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like that's true. I should do that, because I don't know what the back of an espresso machine looks like. Like I just like coffee.
Yeah.
I need to like join like a barista training program. So I found one online at this like old church that had like a bell tower that had a coffee shop, and they had a barista training program. And so that's what I did that summer. I was just baristaing at this coffee shop.
Yeah.
And learning about coffee. And that's when I started digging into like, well, how are people serving chai at coffee shops? And I realized it was like pre-brewed concentrates or powders. And so I started kind of looking at the companies selling chai concentrates and powders on the market at the time. And I realized I was like, nobody looks like me.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if anyone.
Like, where do they get these recipes from?
And a lot of times it was, and it might have been a good product, but I think that what was missing was like the story, like, which people care about, wasn't there. But I couldn't sleep. Like, that's all I would think about was like chai.
You're like, I want to tell the story of chai through my lived experience.
Yes. And I wasn't even like, is this a business? I was just like, this is weird. Like, and
why can't I stop thinking about this?
Exactly. And I was like trying to figure out, what do I want to do? Like, is this really something viable? In 2018 was when I was like, okay, I'm going to go full time. Like, this is like what I'm going to do.
Wow. I actually love that story because I feel like a lot of times when you talk to founders and entrepreneurs, like they do this like backwards looking sort of revision of history where they make it sound like, yes, I had this whole like master plan. And like, this was like how I envisioned the company would grow and my 5-year plan, my 10-year plan and the empire. So like, it's actually so refreshing to hear you be like, well, it was just an idea I couldn't get out of my head and like started as a side project. We were literally like tinkering on a recipe and then like we got more and more customers. We're like, okay, it's a business. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Fast forwarding a little bit.
Yeah.
How did we get from you like mixing the chai and like brewing it in this basement to all the way now you're on the shelves of Erewhon?
Yeah.
Wait, so for people who don't know, how would you describe Erewhon? Like the
Erewhon.
Fanciest.
It's a very expensive. It's a grocery store. Well, people will pay anything for all the things on the shelves. Has like a bit of a cult following.
Yes, that's what it is.
And it's kind of like a tourist. Like,
it is.
Like people will come to LA and be like, I went to Erewhon.
Yeah. Like, if I didn't actually know you, I would be like, oh, One Stripe. They're on the shelves of Erewhon. They've made it big. Done deal now.
Yeah, but it's tough because they're very expensive and like the margins are squeezed and like you're still working with a distributor. And so like retail is not our big thing, but Erewhon was important because I was like, I think that really gives some brand recognition. And I remember when we had first applied, we had just applied online because they usually tell you like just apply through their portal online, which can feel like a black box because you can't follow up. Like you send some samples, but then there's no, like they literally say like, don't follow up on this email. Like we will let you know if we're interested. They have a program which is like a marketing program, but it's an expensive buy-in. Mm-hmm. So it's just like for a lot of small businesses, like it's just like, it's tough. It's tough to like justify that.
It's an expensive bet.
Exactly. I actually kind of negotiated with them in a weird way where I was like, oh, I don't want to do this program. Mm-hmm. And they were like, and I'm sure nobody says like, I don't want to do this program. Yeah, I was like, well, you said it's not mandatory, so like I'm gonna pass. Let's just get in. And they're like, oh, well, if you don't do this program, you just have to apply again. And then I think it was like maybe a month later they came back and they were like, okay, you know what? Like we'll let you do a December end cap and we'll just throw in that marketing program. I think they liked the product and they're like, no, we really like this product. We want you to.
So the product stood on its own.
It stood on its own.
Yeah.
That end cap was really helpful because I think it really got our product into people. Being able to say that you're in Erewhon is really nice. Yeah. Like, it is a place where people go to discover new products.
Like, I feel like people go there for the curation aspect.
Yes.
They go and they're like, oh, I know this has been very carefully vetted. I will buy anything from here because I know it's best.
Yeah.
It's a retail channel, but it's also in a way like a marketing sort of play.
The staff at Erewhon does really like value the products that they sell. So I think they are like champions of the brands.
Yeah. Okay. So then speaking of all your different distribution channels, can you talk us a little bit through the financials of running your business?
What's a little bit unique about us is our channel strategy and like our omni-channel strategy where like a lot of businesses will go DTC, like all in, like that's what we're doing. Yeah. E-commerce, doing ads, cost per click, or they're doing like all in on retail where it's like, we got to be in the biggest distributors. We got to get into like Whole Foods, like really squeezed margins. And like, that's where they're playing. And for us, like, because I started this company with like this chai concentrate product that is actually a food service product, we're able to play in like the food service channel, which is very different from like retail and direct to consumer because we're able to have like bulk packaging and we're able to work with distributors that are not the same as like grocery distributors. So right now our business is about 65-70% in the food service and like retail channel and like about 30% in like direct to consumer.
Okay. And are the margins better?
The margins typically end up being a little bit better because a lot of our distributors, they have like a margin that they want, but there's not like a bunch of like fees. Something that I don't know if many people know is when you get into a grocery store, there's things called slotting fees and there's things called free fills. So like they're going to charge you for slotting you and like putting your product on the shelf. In food service, it's like a really nice recurring revenue channel where once they're about to run out, they're going to place an order again.
Yeah. B2B.
B2B. Yeah, exactly. We were only B2B. And then the pandemic forced us to become like DTC. I had always wanted to make blends that people could use at home to like learn how to make chai themselves because that's what I really wanted to teach people, right?
Yeah.
And so that was when I was like, okay, I have these recipes in mind. Like, let's start testing them out and let's launch two.
Yeah.
And that's when we launched our Chai Me at Home blend. So the whole thing was like, our customers are at home, so let's meet them where they are.
Let's see.
This is Chai Me at Home.
I love it.
And this was
so good.
The whole idea was like, okay, how do we make this like an educational package? And then the back of every bag says like chai means tea, or we have one called Gulab City and it says like rose, gulab means rose.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit of like point of education.
And
yeah.
What are your feelings about the phrase chai tea?
I think the reason it rubs people the wrong way is because there are so many things that we just like call what they are that belong to like not our culture, but like when it comes to our culture, people like need to like call it chai tea and call it naan bread. And it's like our culture has been here long enough in America that like we can just, can't we all just like now like know that it's naan and can we call it naan?
It's like that joke where the people are like, you could pronounce Timothy Chalamet, like you can pronounce my name.
Yes.
Learn how to say my name if you can say Timothy Chalamet.
Okay, here is my oh, I haven't heard that, but that is so true.
I think Hasan Minhaj does that. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right.
The second one that we want is it's Haldi Doodh.
Yeah.
And Haldi means turmeric and Doodh means milk in Hindi. When golden milk was becoming popular in coffee shops, I remember just like standing in line and being like, dude, it's Haldi Doodh. Like being like, it's Haldi Doodh. And so it was like supposed to be a play on that because it was like everyone was just like,
just call it by its name. Like,
yes.
It's not that hard.
So what I always say is like when I go to an Italian restaurant, when I'm ordering gnocchi, it doesn't say potato pillows.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have to call it what it is.
Yeah.
And like if I don't know what it is, I'm just going to look up the type of pasta because I don't know what all the types of pastas are. So like I will learn and then I will know and then I will be better for it and we will all know more. That was my intention behind it.
Yeah.
And after we launched it, a lot of like non-South Asians reached out and were like, I had no idea this was called Haldi Doodh.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it that from now on.
Yeah.
Imagine like me in like college or like in high school going to a coffee shop and seeing Haldi Doodh on the menu. I would feel so seen.
Yes.
20 years ago, nobody knew what boba was. Right? Like, but I'm like,
I did.
You did, but the average American didn't know what boba was.
It's so
but like now everybody knows what it is. So like it is possible for us to like make things mainstream. We don't have to always feel like we have to define everything further when it comes to our culture. Like they can just be part of like the melting pot culture of America.
Yeah. And so you're like, yeah, it's Haldi Doodh.
That's what it is.
And if you don't know what it is, then ask.
And what I've realized is that after we launched this, there have been more companies that have called their turmeric blends Haldi Doodh.
Oh,
and like that,
so satisfying.
I'm just like, oh, like maybe I did that. Like maybe somebody was like, well, they did it.
Me.
Yeah, I'm like maybe like they were like, oh, well, they did it, and like so like we can call it that too, and like that in itself is like a huge
or like maybe people are looking for Haldi Doodh now,
yeah,
instead of golden milk.
Yeah.
Should we make some tea?
Yeah, let's do this.
Should we make some tea? Yay! Well, we have so many more questions, but we can do them while you're making tea. Too.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
It smells amazing.
It smells like kind of chocolatey. No. You looked away for 1 second. Yeah. This happens all the time to everyone. Sorry, it's like not an Instagram setting right there. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the authentic.
This one
for the reality.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to ask you about some of the challenges. Tell us about some of the challenges of running a business
yes.
and having a newborn / still baby.
I think when you own your own business, you're just so like, I'll just do it. I'll just do it. Like, I'll just get it done.
And because you've always had a very lean team.
Yeah. Right. I'm so used to doing, like, having my hands in everything. So we used to make all of our products in-house. Mm-hmm. And so, like, there was a lot of, like, being in the warehouse, packing orders, like, all of our own fulfillment, building pallets, like, doing a lot of, like, laborious things.
Yeah.
Which I just couldn't do once I got pregnant. So, like, having somebody, like, kind of take over the operations was great. And having somebody that I very much trusted to, like, take care of it, like, while I was, like, you know, after pregnancy, even at the hospital, I was still, like, answering emails from my phone.
I remember, like, it was a very difficult, like, grueling birthing process.
Yeah. Like, I had, like, an emergency C-section. Yeah. So many things didn't go the way that I thought they would go. And there were so many things that I didn't understand. And so much of it was so scary to me. They didn't even give me the baby because I was so zonked out.
Yeah.
And Nooper has a video of, like, so he gave her skin to skin. And he even told the doctors, he's like, can I hand her off to my wife? Can we put Yara on her? And they were like, look at, like, no, like, that's,
they're like, she's high.
They're like, yes, they're like, we cannot give, like, there's like a video of me, I'm just like zonked. And they're just like, no, it's like not safe to give her the baby because she's so out of it. Yeah. There's a lot of, like, shame around, like, oh, well, what if I had done that? And, like, what if they, whatever, like, should I have gotten a C-section? There's just, like, so much that you're, like, processing. And I didn't know how to, like, because, like, it's my company. It's like, I don't.
Yeah. Like, you've never taken time off from your company.
I've always, like, worked because there's always something you could do.
Yes.
You know?
That's how I feel.
So there's no boundaries. And so, like, I would, like, jump in and, like, do stuff and, like, work on stuff. But in retrospect, it's like, should I have done that? Should I have just turned my brain off and, like, allowed myself a break? Or, like, even if that meant I just, like, spent time with Yara, or I just, like, spent the time that I wasn't spending with Yara just, like, by myself. So, like, my whole thing has always been, you know, when we talk about having another kid, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to have another kid unless I know I'm gonna have maternity leave when I deliver. Or I have, like, one Stripe Try set up in a way that, like, I can truly take, like, 3 to 4 months completely to myself, like, and not, like, participate in anything. And I think part of that's, like, you probably want to have somebody, like, in leadership on your team who can, it makes sense for them to take
decisions.
Yeah, and, like, they don't feel like it's a burden for them to take on so much. And, like, yes, they can make those decisions instead of, like, deferring to you. Men don't have to deal with that. Like, they don't have to worry about that. And it was, like, funny because Nooper had paternity leave.
That's crazy, yeah.
And he was, like, so helpful. But, like, it still isn't, like, the same. Like, when other people around you are helpful, it's not the same as, like, you actually taking time to yourself.
Your advice, essentially, to anyone running their own business and, like, who is planning to get pregnant and have a baby is to intentionally plan for maternity leave.
Yes.
Even if you think, like, oh, well, I can sort of just, like, muddle through it. Like, I'll be on email.
No, everyone should take maternity leave. Everyone should take at least 3 months that are, like, completely, like, not doing anything, like, at all. Like, just don't do anything.
Yeah, no work.
No work.
Because you'll be, like, working on your baby.
Yes, because you're also
yourself.
You're learning so much stuff. This might not be true for everybody, but, you know, at least for me, there was so much emotional stuff that, like, I'm still working through, like, trauma-wise, like, that you have to kind of, like, give yourself some grace and some space, and, like, your business will hopefully still be there. Or you should at least plan to set it up in a way that it doesn't self-combust. Yeah, that's something that I'm like, oh, I really wish I took some time off.
Why don't we talk about, speaking of chai, let's talk about something spicy. Okay. So tell me, what's, like, one of the spiciest things that you've encountered in the course of running your business?
Okay, something that like, I don't really talk about, and I think people don't talk about, is I had a co-founder when I started, and now I'm a solopreneur. We parted ways, and that did require me to buy my co-founder out.
Well, also just, like, buying a co-founder out is, like, notoriously thorny, like, notoriously difficult to do.
It can be
and,
very
often fails.
Yeah.
So then how did you navigate that? Or, like, where do you think you went right where other people, like, go wrong when they're trying to do a co-founder buyout?
It was, like, very obvious that, like, We had different goals. We had different ways of doing things. We didn't work well together. It was so obvious.
Yeah.
And it was at a point where it was like it was affecting the business. And so it was very easy to like sit down and I mean, they're very awkward conversations, but to like sit down and be like, if you want to stay on, then I don't want to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
And you take on the responsibility of growing this. And if you feel like you can do that, then that's fine. I'm going to take the money I put out off the table. And like, I was the only one who had invested any money. But it was like, you have to understand. Away. Yeah. I was like, this isn't going to grow if we're both doing this. So like, the only way I want to do this is if I'm just doing this. Sometimes that means like being assertive and being cutthroat about it and being like
hard-nosed, I guess.
Yeah.
There's like all this content on TikTok now about like how like being willing to walk away is like the most powerful thing in the world.
And I was, because I knew it wasn't a good fit for me or my co-founder.
How long did it take from you initiating that conversation I think I
got very lucky that like it was a pretty quick and fairly painless process. It was like, I think it was like a month or two.
So you bought them out of all of their ownership?
I bought them out of all of their ownership. That's kind of cool. That was important to me. It was like clean cut.
Like, close the book on it.
Yeah, not like nothing else on it. I think I felt after I did that, it felt like it was the first time where I could be like, oh, I can launch the products I want to launch. But like having that freedom, like that's when I launched Shine Me at Home and Holy Dude. And like that's when when I really started feeling comfortable in my own skin, being a South Asian woman running this like chai company.
That like think through what your ideal outcome would be and what the other options are and like maybe present them with two options.
Yes. Or like just think about like what are you willing to, how much can you afford? What are you willing to pay? How far along is your business? Are you willing to walk away? Or just putting it in their court, like you take on the responsibility. A lot of co-founders will not. They'll be like, no, I'm not doing this by myself.
Yeah.
But also, like, another thing that's important is, like, if your co-founder has an expertise, are you truly okay with, like, that expertise leaving, right? Mm-hmm. I knew deep down, I was like, well, there is a chance that, like, I will struggle with this in the short term. I was like, it's worth it for me. I'll figure it out. It's fine. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
That was like definitely an interesting experience. Like learned a lot, and I hope I never have to do that again.
But what a valuable experience. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's something I feel like you almost never hear people talk about the topic, but it happens so much. What are some of the challenges that you faced as a female founder? Because I know there are challenges.
Yeah.
I know.
So many. Well, I think also like there's like something about being like a female brown founder who's like just like a very female petite person. Yes, like I'm always just like, are people taking me seriously? There's just like so much pushback. There was an investor that I'd spoken to who was like a tech investor, wasn't a CPG investor. He was like, oh, wait, your husband likes entrepreneurship? Like, why doesn't he work at OneStripe? Like, why doesn't he like join you at OneStripe? And I was just like, why would he do that? Like, maybe that's not his interest.
It's my thing.
Also,
like I run the business.
I was like, would you ever ask him why doesn't she work at your startup? But I was so taken aback. I was just like, is he asking me this because he wants my husband to be like a part of the startup because he like trusts him more?
Yeah.
Just on him being like a man. I just was like, this is such an inappropriate and weird question to ask.
Or like, what is the intention behind your question? Like, why are you
things like that happen a lot, right? When we went to visit I think we visited like 5 farms and to choose like who we wanted to work with. The manager was this older Indian man. He wouldn't talk to me directly. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He wouldn't talk to me. And my husband came with me on this trip. So it was like the two of us. He kept directing questions to my husband and only talking to him. And he knew that it was my company. I was asking him questions and he would like kind of direct them to my husband. Yeah. And that I think happens more than you would think.
She's like, I'm not going to fight against the system today.
Yeah. So
she's like, not today.
Yeah, exactly. And so like sometimes it's like people don't take you seriously, but you're like, but I did do some of this. So like I did make some of this happen.
Yeah. So then what do you do? Are you just like, well, I take myself seriously. So I'm still going to just forge ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not afraid of just like saying a snarky comment, letting the person know that like I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
Or that's weird.
Yeah. Letting them feel uncomfortable too.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. I wish I could do that more.
Well, sometimes I don't even realize it in the moment. I'm like, oh, I should have said this. I should have been like, oh, why are you asking me that? Like, where does that coming from?
It's so hard to do that.
It's so hard to do that.
And like, I feel like uncomfortable just like thinking
about it. But then you're like, okay, great. Like, that's not a good partner. That's like not a good investor. They don't understand the business. They're thinking about the wrong things. Maybe they're not able to see value in you. And if they're not, then they're not going to be a good partner.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, you know what? I don't want them to be a part of my journey.
Yeah.
Like, I'm building this company and it's going to be really successful. You're not going to be part of that.
Yeah. But I think that, like, if there's more of us, like, imagine when you were growing up, did you see a lot of, like, women CEOs?
It's like you have, like, Indra, right?
Yeah. So, like, you're like, okay, that's
you
like,
got one.
Like, that's one. But you're like, whereas, like, now I'm like, oh, there's, like, so many founders that look like me, that are, like, minority women, that are actually crushing it. And I'm like, oh, I hope when Yara is older, she's like, I can do so much. Like, this is like, this is second nature. Like, cool or like startup became like a cool word, like right after I graduated, where people were talking about startups.
Yeah.
And like,
it's funny because so many family businesses were startups, but it was never called that. It was called a small business.
Yes.
And like, obviously none of them were VC funded. They were like funded by a loan that they got from the bank or from like
a family
members. Yeah.
Having like that kind of like someone to look up to, like no matter what happens, if I were to find out that like somebody started a business because they're like, oh, I saw this girl Farah had this company, One Stripe Chai, like that would be great because like I didn't have anybody. Yeah. And like that's why it took me so long to even come to like, oh, is this something I should do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
and they have you to look up to.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope Yara, like just like I think about my mom and I'm like, oh, remember that one time she like had a restaurant? I hope Yara is able to like come back to that. And if that's like not something she wants to do, that's like totally fine.
I mean, just by definition, like her internal narrative now growing up is like, my mom was an entrepreneur. Yeah. She ran a business. She was in an accelerator. Yeah. She had, VC
my parents were, she's going to be like, my parents were both very scrappy people. But also, like, since I started the business and now, like, I've also changed a lot as a person. So there are, like, kind of, like, waves of, like, who am I now, adjacent to this, like, company. Yeah. So those are also kind of things you have to, like, think about all the time.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like we've come full circle. I think that's a good place to end it.
Yay!
Yay! Nice job!
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the Tiger Sisters. Before we get to the main takeaways, we would so appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe. And if you could also share this episode with someone who might find it helpful. Alrighty, let's get to the takeaways. The first takeaway is to embrace your own identity and your own intersectionality. Farah's unique identity as a South Asian woman became one of her brand's biggest strengths. She realized early on that many brands selling chai concentrates didn't share her cultural background, and the authenticity of the story and the brand was often missing. Farah decided to lean into her own story and her own heritage, making it a point to share her own lived experiences through One Stripe Chai. This personal touch has set her brand apart from other competitors. It resonates deeply with customers who want more than just a product. They want to connect with the origins. The second takeaway is to be prepared for the challenges of being a female founder. As a petite woman of color, Farah often faced situations where she felt underestimated or even dismissed. She shared stories of business partners and investors who directed questions to her husband or even questioned her authority, even though she is the one running her own business. These experiences taught her the importance of being assertive and not being shy about calling out inappropriate behavior. Farah encourages female founders to stand their ground and to call out when something feels off. The third takeaway is to plan for life's challenges. Farah's experience of running a business and becoming a new mom has taught her many lessons on work-life balance. She candidly discussed managing her business through pregnancy, birth, postpartum recovery, and oftentimes feeling like she had to stay connected to the business at all times. In hindsight, Farah wishes she had spent more time planning for maternity leave. She now advocates for founders, especially female founders, to intentionally set time aside and set boundaries, especially during significant life transitions like having a baby. Her advice is to create a plan that allows your business to run smoothly in your absence, ensuring that you have the support and systems in place so you can step away when needed. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Tiger Sisters. We'll see you next time. Bye!